This is Eric Alexander, Six Arrows Consulting. Leadership often involves a mix of the routine and the very much not routine. In the finance world, that could include, on the routine side, all those cycles that are going on all the time in your world. The daily cycles, the monthly cycles of getting the books closed, quarterly, annual, lots of different cycles, all the routine that's going on inside finance, but also lots of non-routine, maybe big transactions that your organization is doing, perhaps an acquisition or an expansion, or you're helping with a new product launch or a system conversion, things like that. Mix of the routine and the very much not routine. There was a book that came out about a year ago. It's How Big Things Get Done by Flyvbjerg. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing his name right. And his co-author, Dan Gardner. And it's called How Big Things Get Done: The Surprising Factors That Determine the Fate of Every Project, from home renovations to space exploration and everything in between. As I've been thinking about those non-routine parts of where we lead, the lessons in this book have been very, very helpful to me. One of the things he notes, and Flyvbjerg is an expert on mega projects, projects that typically cost $1 billion or more, like putting on the Olympics or building a nuclear power plant, things like that. One of the things he's learned as he's studied those is hardly any of the mega projects actually meet their objectives. In fact, he's seen that so often that he calls it, let me find it here on page 7, what he calls the iron law of mega projects: over budget, over time, under benefits, over and over and over again. In fact, he says only 0.5% of the mega projects he studied meet the objectives, are on budget, and come in on time. That's horrible. We don't want to see that happen with the projects that we're leading. Even if they're not mega projects, they're significant to us. And there's several lessons he brings up in his book. I commend the whole book to you, but 2 things in particular stand out. Principle number 1, think slow, act fast. Now, particularly if you've got a time frame, you're trying to meet the deadlines, get everything done on time, you want to jump in and go. But his point is, if we don't spend adequate time on the front end planning, thinking carefully about what we're going to do, we actually end up costing time later. I worked with a CEO who said this: we think slow, we go slow so we can go fast. Sorry, I'll get it right there. We go slow up front by thinking really carefully so we can go fast. It's a very similar way to put the deal. And it's also avoiding that problem of ready, fire, aim. We need to get it in right order. We need to think slow so we can act fast. Then another principle he talks about, I like this one. He says, let's look for, in the project you're doing, let's look for repeatable elements. He calls it modularity. And then he brings up the principle of the Legos. Now, those of you with kiddos know that these aren't actually Legos. These are Duplos. I stole them from downstairs, but borrowed them from downstairs out of the toy bucket that our grandson and other grandkids are regularly getting these out. His point is, not everything in a project is absolutely unique. Look for those things where there are similar elements where you can learn lessons from one part of the project and apply them elsewhere. Maybe in a system conversion, you've got your AP. What can you learn from AP that'll help you as you're dealing with accounts receivable? Of course, they're not identical, but are there things you can learn from one that you can apply to the other? Or maybe you're in a bank and you're doing a system conversion. What can you learn from loan administration that might help you when you're working with deposit operations? Anyway, it's an interesting thought, and it's very, very practical. As I mentioned earlier, none of my projects have ever been $1 billion or over, but still they've been significant to me and my leadership. They've been significant to the organization I'm working in. I expect that none of you are also leading billion-dollar projects, but we still want them to succeed. We still want them to come in that 0.5% that meets all those objectives: on budget, on time, meeting those objectives. What are the benefits that were intended? So the lessons from this book are very helpful. I commend it to you. Think slow to act fast. Find your Legos. All the other lessons he talks about is something to think about. Thanks for listening.